Hi, my name is Jens Kafitz and I am the developer of Mari Extension Pack. In this video, we will look at a series of minor features and improvements that were added in Mari Extension Pack 6R3. So a lot of small things that don't quite deserve their own tutorial or theme, yet are still good to know. A new addition I personally can't live without anymore is the new Action Launcher. The launcher allows you to execute any Mari function quickly via this dialog that pops up under your cursor by pressing the hotkey Shift and F. The tool is also available here in the Tools menu. However, it is really designed to be used via a single hotkey to give you access to Mari functions you may not always use or actions where you don't remember their dedicated hotkeys. The first time you open the launcher, it may take half a second to collect all Mari actions, but after that it will open instantly, as it remains in memory for the duration of your Mari session. In the pop-up dialog, you can simply search for a Mari action to execute. Select it, for example, with the up and down arrows and execute it via the return key or by double-clicking on it. If only one search result is visible, it is pre-selected and you can just press return to launch the action. If you open it without any search term active, you will see a history of your last executed functions and you can clear the history using this X button. The search operates with a fuzzy logic, meaning that if you search for doc, you will get any items that contain doc anywhere in their name. If you want to search for beginnings of actions that have more than one word in their name, you can just add the first characters in the search. So if I type R space ID, I will see the ramp editor action. If you really want to limit the search to just the first characters in an action, use uppercase letters without spaces. For example, uppercase H, U, P will show me hide unselected patches. All the filter logic I just explained can be found in the tooltip you get when hovering your cursor over the search field. In this filter dropdown, you can configure on what action categories the search should be allowed to work on. So if you want to exclude any layer functions in your search, you can untick layers here, and until you change that, the tool will always ignore any actions that are within the layers action group while searching. In a previous extension pack version, I introduced the concept of increment ladders on sliders, for example here in the ramp editor. This has now been extended to other tools. In Hotboxes containing sliders, you can now right mouse click on the slider to open the ladder and then drag away from one of its buttons to change the slider values at different speeds. Hotboxes now also have additional visual styling options that can be applied via the Hotbox Manager. Down here, for example, you can activate a drop shadow effect and you have a bunch of available settings then to configure the look of the shadow. The increment ladder has also been added to sliders within the Substance Baker bridge as an additional option to control them. Apart from this UX change, a bunch of other changes have been made to the Baker bridge. While you bake, it will now continuously check the available RAM and GPU memory and try and automatically free up space if you are running low by tweaking Mari's own settings to give Substance more space to work with. You can see your available free space down here and also use this broom button to clear the memory manually. By clicking on the GPU button, you can switch Substance over to use CPU baking instead, an option that previously was only available in the Substance settings here. If we take a look at this Select Mari Objects to Bake section, we can see some additional settings compared to previous versions. The Baker bridge by default sends the geometry you imported into Mari to Substance's bakers. However, after importing Geo into Mari, you may already have lost some custom data that Mari doesn't support. Things like custom normals, shape names, polygroup, or vertex colors would therefore be lost after import. Using this Prefer Original Mesh from Disk checkbox, you can now force Substance to use the original mesh file you used for bringing the geometry into Mari, instead of relying on the geometry that Mari already processed. This then gives Substance access again to the previously lost data. If you are using geometry versions in Mari, you can now also bake those versions. By default, the Baker bridge will always bake the currently active Geo version. Using this new drop-down menu, you can now batch bake other Geo versions as well, for example all that are loaded, or a custom selection of geometry versions. It is important to remember that a bake will override patches from other Geo versions. So to use this, for example, to bake model variants you loaded in as Geo versions, you need to ensure that the model variants are on unique patches that don't overlap with other Geo versions. As you can see here, my user interface is a lot darker than Mari is in its standard version. In the Mari Preferences MISC tab, we have a new section called UI Style, which allows you to configure how bright the UI is. If you tick on this preview checkbox, you can preview how the end result will look. However, it is really only a preview, and the actual look change will only be apparent after a Mari restart. Below the preview checkbox is a drop-down called Theme. Here you can choose between pre-made custom themes that modify the look of the Mari user interface more dramatically. For example, we have Extension Pack Steel, which has cooler colors and a lot of style customization. The theme is also available in a more desaturated version, which removes the slight blue tint from the gray tones. We also have a custom theme in the drop-down menu. This opens the Style Editor, which allows you to customize Mari's user interface color palette. If you go to the Advanced tab, you see a more detailed separation of colors. If you click on a color here, you can modify it, and often you will get a short description of what the color will change. If you are unsure about which color you need to modify, you can use the Color Search button up here. Click anywhere in your Mari interface, and you will get the color you need to modify filtered. Right now I'm using the Mari default theme. If I go back to my preferences and choose an extension pack theme, then go to the custom option, I will have a lot finer control over the interface. If we again look at the Advanced tab, we see a lot more options as well as a preview of each interface type I am modifying, allowing you to fine-tune individual elements in a more granular manner than you can when you use the Mari default theme as a starting point. Once you have made an adjustment, the theme dropdown will remain on the custom selection. To access again the style dialog without resetting anything, choose the No Change option, then reselect the custom option, which again brings you to the color dialog. Let's move on to some new additions and changes in Mari's object palette. If you right mouse click on an object, you have a new option to unsubdivide a mesh, which will remove any subdivision you previously applied via Mari's subdivision action. If you go to the extension pack menu and inside the object submenu, you will also find a new convenience option to delete all geochannels on an object, which circumvents Mari's confirmation dialog when you remove them one by one here in the object palette. By default, Extension Pack ships with a number of standard geometries that can be added to your scene by right mouse clicking, either in an empty space of your object palette and choosing Add Default Object, or directly right mouse clicking on an object and choosing the same option there. Depending on which mode you open the dialog, it will add the default object you choose as a new object or as an object version to the object you launched it from. Different from previous Extension Pack versions, this window is now acting like a shelf, meaning you can add your own custom geometry to it. You can create a new shelf tab here and point it to a folder containing your geometry, and the objects will be available for you to easily be added to your scene. Here, for example, we can see I have some scale reference objects, so I can stay grounded in my scale while texturing. You can also create virtual tabs from your filter results. So for example, if I filter for material and create a filtered tab, it will create a duplicate of my tab with the filter permanently set. New tabs can also be added via an environment variable pointing to folders containing geometry. So if you wish to give team members access to predefined default objects within your pipeline, you can do so. You have several controls over how default objects are displayed in this shelf, their thumbnails, and even post-import commands. These options need to be defined via additional files in your geometry folder, sitting alongside the geometry files. Let's look inside Extension Pack's resource folder to see how this is set up. Here we have our object subdirectory, where the standard default objects are located. At the very least, you will want to have a thumbnail representing the geometry. You can add that by placing an image file named exactly like the geometry file into your directory. In addition, you can define a lot of extra options via so-called JSON files. Here we have an example of one of those. The thumbnail path is empty here because we already placed a correctly named file in the folder. But using this attribute, you can provide a custom path. The tooltip lets you add information to the thumbnail when the user hovers their cursor over it. The UI name defines the label text that is displayed below the thumbnail. If that is left empty, just the file name will be displayed. The Mari geometry name sets the name of the object or version in Mari once the object has been imported. The Python callback file allows you to define a Python script that should be executed after the geometry is loaded. This could be used, for example, to auto-subdivide the geometry after import node graph templates, or similar things. Finally, the load options can be used to tell Mari how to import the meshes, if you wish to create selection groups, merge geometry, etc. The options that can be set here can be found in Mari's Python help in the geometry import flags class. So all of these so-called class variables can be passed to that setting, and if it is empty, it will default to Mari's default import options. Instead of defining a Python file via the JSON text file, you can also directly place a Python file next to the geometry file with the same name. Here you can find an example of this. The geometry and geometry version Python objects will be automatically passed on to these Python files, so you then define your own functions that make use of them and launch post-import processes. To wrap this tutorial up, let's cover quickly 3 additional features. In the selection menu, we have a new Show Last Hidden option on the hotkey Ctrl, Alt, and H. This option will unhide the last faces or patches you have made invisible using the hide action without affecting the visibility of hidden parts of your mesh that were hidden further in the past. Inside Extension Pack's channel export, you now have the ability to export maps from all your geometry versions by turning off this Limit Range to Geo Version checkbox. If off, the exporter will step through all your Geo versions and export them one by one. As the last minor addition, via Extension Pack's project menu, you can now delete all breakpoint image sets in your project with a simple click. This can be useful to reduce archive sizes, or if you need to migrate a project to another asset and you want to force rebake all breakpoints using tools like Smart Bake and Update.